All right, welcome back to the reality show Life Coach podcast. Today we're going to talk about season 20, episode 7 of The Bachelorette. And with me today, I have Stefanie Marianné. Stefanie, I'm so excited. Introduce yourself.
Oh my gosh, Lynn, I am so excited to be here with you. When I heard that this was going to be about the Bachelorette, I just about I was like, oh my God, Batch Nation. Yes, I finally get to talk about all things Batch Nation. Not ashamed of my Batch Nation obsession. I'm ready.
I love that because I think when I posted on our the Facebook group we're in together, the coaching posse group, looking for guests, no less than 10 people tagged you and been like, you have to talk to Stephanie because not
Yes.
only are you into Bachelor Nation, you're also dating coach. Do you want to say more about that?
Ooh, yes. I am a dating coach for women specifically that have been in toxic relationships. I think that what I loved the most about this episode was that what drew me in and got me excited about talking to you about this episode was that Charity was really choosing herself, and she was setting such a great example of what that looks like. And that's what I teach women to do in my own coaching practice. And it's really exciting work. Very grateful to be able to do that, especially since I'm someone that used to dabble in toxic relationships myself. So, yeah, definitely excited about this work.
Yes, I know. And I was just like looking through your Instagram and everything, and I was like, oh, this lines up perfectly because I don't know, you just share some amazing stories on there and everything. And so I just can't wait to just experience what's going to come out of our mouths today. Um,
I'm so excited.
well, let's dive right in. I'll do a quick recap and then we'll get to the juicy parts, which is talking about everything that went down. Okay, so we have finally left the United States. We are in Fiji, and Charity says that she is still falling for all three men, and all three men are falling for Charity. So nothing there has changed, even though they had probably a long ass flight. We start out with Xavier, and he admits at the beginning that he is still feeling doubt but love, and he's hopeful that his date will help clarify things. It definitely clarifies things, but maybe not in the way that he thought it would. And at the end of that date, Charity ultimately sends him home, but we're going to talk a lot about that today, so we'll save that for a couple minutes from now. Next day, she goes on a date with Joey. They hop on some ATVs. Um, Joey's the first person that Charity admits that she's falling in love to his face, which is kind of a big deal on The Bachelor to do that, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. That is a big deal. I think showcasing your love life, your love journey, being vulnerable, saying the right things, saying the wrong things, just being seen in general in a dating aspect of any kind for the world to watch. Oh my gosh. Yes,
And I
big
feel like there's
time.
probably big talks with the producers. Can I say this? Can I not? Is it in my contract? But she's feeling it and she's just like bursting at the seams to tell Joey about this. He talks about some vulnerable things on the date, which I think we're also going to talk about a little bit later here about being a people pleaser. Charity totally relates to this. Next day, she's on a dot with Dayton. They also express love for each other. Charity admits to him that she's falling in love with him. So now we have two different men knowing that Charity's falling in love with them. He also gets invited to go on to the fantasy suites overnight, as did Joey. And the next day, for both of them, she seems very smitten and wants to move on with both of them. And then at the very end of the episode, the teaser that they've been teasing, the person who's coming back, they've been teasing this for a while now, is Aaron B. He shows up in Fiji. He comes up to her while she's on the chaise lounge and just says, hey, I just kind of felt like there was a little bit more here. You said it yourself. So I just wanted to show up and see if there's anything there. I for sure thought that she was going to say, amazing, you're here, but sorry, goodbye. And she didn't. It looks like she invites him to stay. Did you get that impression too? Or what did you think?
Yes, yes, yes. But the Bachelor producers are so amazing, and they're so amazing at making us think one thing and then doing like this benevolent bait and switch where it's like, oh, you thought it was this, but it's really this. I personally am getting this idea that she's exploring the idea of keeping him around, but she's really invested in the other guys. And I'm really interested in seeing what decision she does ultimately make. This one's a little bit of a cliffhanger for me.
That's what I felt too. 100%. I was like, I'm happy to see him back, but of course, like this brought up a lot for her. So I could see her just being like, no, this is a no for me. I already decided this once, just because she is trying to focus on what's next, which is actual proposals from whichever person she decides to move forward with. Oh my gosh. So on that note, are you ready to talk about coachable moments?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. Listen, I was watching the episode and I was like, I had my notes up on my phone. I was like, this, and this. I really was just like having a ball with it. So I am so excited to talk about this with you.
And what I really love, because Stephanie and I have been sharing notes ahead of time, is when I was reading through your notes, I am like consistently reminded, because you drop notes in here about this, that these are real people, although beautiful people that look like movie stars. They are still real people that are doing real human scary things, admitting real human scary things that they probably have only spoken to one person. Now it's one to millions on camera.
Oh yeah.
So it's easy to forget on a podcast like this, or like out there in the world, that like, it's easy to criticize people and say they're doing the wrong thing or they should have done things differently. But we have to remember that like this is scary stuff that they're doing. And I think that your notes, and I know we're about to get into this, is like really reminded me of that, is that you were looking at it from the very human side of things. And so I just wanted to call that out first, because I appreciated that you brought that back in, because I feel like the last several weeks it's been really easy to be like, dishing about what people did wrong, but we also have to remember that they're humans. And I think that's an important part that comes up in coaching all the time, is that like how we are human beings just trying to figure it out in the world. And so I just want to thank you ahead of time for reminding me of that, because I took that to heart. So on that
Same.
note, do you want to talk about this first date that she went on with Xavier?
Oh yeah. And you know what? Thank you for bringing up the humanness. It's like really easy to forget that dating is all about connecting your humanness to another person's humanness, and when you see that on TV, it is easy to forget that. So I'm so glad that like you appreciated that part. The thing with the date with Xavier, the one thing that really stood out to me was that while it wasn't necessarily easy on the ears hearing what he had to say, I think what I want to commend him for firstly is how honest and vulnerable he was. Yes, the timing was a little bit suspicious. The things he did, probably, they're really easy to judge, right? And let's go back to humanness. We all make mistakes. I think we all have a dating history that sometimes isn't the best. Like, my dating history is an absolute shit show. There's things that I've done that I'm not proud of. And then there's this thing that Xavier so vulnerably shares with Charity about some effed up stuff that he did in his past, right? And to come around and attempt to explain what he's learned about it, while it may not have come rolled off of his tongue so elegantly and eloquently, I think that he was attempting to make sense of it. And I saw where Charity was triggered. And what I really admired about that moment was she took this time to get up and go soothe her nervous system, because clearly she was triggered from her dating past, from her dating history, based off what it was he was saying, what he was sharing. She didn't like that, right? But this coachable moment that I think is the most beautiful thing to even witness or observe in this, like in this, on this date, is that Xavier shares something vulnerable that he could possibly be judged for. And in that moment when Charity was triggered, she could have judged him and made a very quick decision in that moment that may not have been a self-loving decision, right? But she got up, she collected herself, she soothed her nervous system, she came back collected and came back with curiosity and gave him the opportunity to explain and allow himself to be understood, because her curiosity created space for understanding. And I think that there was a missed opportunity in regards to being able to take this conversation a little bit deeper to really get to what it is he did learn. But I also think that Charity in that moment, there was something that Xavier said about that I think tipped her off to become a little bit more curious. There was something Xavier said about her being a delicate flower, and how, as her being a delicate flower, he could either, he doesn't want to break her, as being the flower. And she had two different perceptions on that. One of the perceptions were, oh, he sees that I'm a delicate flower and he might break me, or he's saying this in a way that's supposed to protect me. I can't figure out what he means. So I think on the date, she was on a mission to figure that out for herself, right? Because she's able to assess. And that's important in the dating world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was impressed by how she approached this too. I had, while you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You do see her a lot walking away, and it does seem to be with the intention of calming her nervous system, which I think a lot of us do forget about, is that like, hey, if you're in a situation where you notice that like, you might not use the word activated, but you might notice that you're stressed, you might notice that you're spinning a little bit, like it's always okay to take a beat and go walk off, which is what she did. Um, I think we forget that we have permission to do that, not only in dating, but like any real life situation. A lot of times on this show, it really seems like somebody's going to like maybe complain to the producer or to do it in the moment or to do something. But it really seemed like in that moment she was leaving to be just like, hey, you know what? I might say something very reactively right now. So I'm going to take a beat and collect myself. She knew ahead of time, she knows herself well enough, and we've seen this in many episodes, that anything related to infidelity is going to trigger her. And so I really do think that she was trying to slow things down a little bit to make sense of like how much of this is like from my past self that I'm bringing into this relationship with Xavier, and how much is this man in front of me? Um, and where do we want to go from here? And I just thought that was such a great moment even for the audience to see, because how many other like single people are watching this going, how do you date? And this is a moment where I was like, actually, we can point to this and say this is a good move in dating. A lot of the stuff that they show, maybe not a good move, but this one was a good move. That was such a good point to bring that up.
Oh, 100%. I just love with Charity, what I love about her is she is like on this journey, and you can very clearly see where she wants to choose herself. She wants her love story to be amazing. She wants a healthy relationship. You can clearly see that. And the level of discomfort that she's willing to feel, and the decision she's willing to make, to me it's just, you see her choosing herself over and over again, and that really does teach the audience on how to date is really making self-loving decisions and choosing yourself, so that you can eventually get to that person that you're going to fall head over heels with,
Yeah.
in love with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too is what I love to see about this is there's so often on this show, a lot of this is like projecting into the future. What is a life going to be like with this person? What is it going to be like? And they're really looking at somebody's potential versus the person in front of them. So it would have been easy enough for Charity to see what she wanted to see in this moment, which is here's like she wanted to see like here's a man who has learned from his mistakes, who's not going to do it again, who's guaranteeing this. But I think there was a moment where she took a step back and be like, no, let's look at the person in front of me. Like he recognizes that this is not a nice thing to do to another human being, but he's still trying to figure it out, and that's okay. It's okay. Like we all get to figure things out, but it doesn't mean that this is my person right now who's ready for marriage, and that is okay. Doesn't mean he's a bad person, doesn't mean I'm a bad person, but I really felt like she was like seeing the person in front of her versus like what she really wanted to see, or okay, let's just she could have also said like, hey, let's just go solve this in the fantasy suites overnight where we don't have cameras on us. But I think she saw enough at this point to realize like, hey, here's a man who is figuring things out. And she even says it herself, like, this is not a build a man program. This is, this is my
I love it.
life. And she's like, I don't want to be the one that helps you figure out how to not cheat on people. Like you got to figure that out
Woo.
yourself.
I tell you, I had to pause and snap my fingers 3 times when she said, "This isn't a build a man workshop." Listen, it really isn't. That is not the purpose of dating. Dating exists to help you evolve, yes, but it doesn't exist to help you figure out who you are in the process. And I think that sometimes women, especially, feel like this need to fix others or to to kind of carry, like do some of the heavy lifting in teaching men like emotional skills. And I mean, that goes both ways, like both parties, you know, struggle with that. But me being a woman, I'm just giving my perspective from my side. And so sometimes I felt that responsibility because of people pleasing, or, oh, maybe if I stick around, I might be able to, you know, change this man into who I want him to be. And that always came back to bite me in the ass, because who I think someone is based off the fantasy that I have, right? Versus who they actually are. Those are two completely different things. And I think it's very easy to take information. Like, for instance, information is what someone says to you or how they behave, how they show up for you. It's easy to take that information and miss it if you're focused on who the idea of someone is, because you're not actually taking the information they're giving you and assessing it to see if that aligns with like your future relationship goals, you know? So yeah, totally agree with you.
Yeah. I was hoping you could share a story, and I didn't ask your permission if you would do this, but I saw it on Instagram, your Beyonce story about going to Beyonce.
Oh,
And I
oh,
just,
yes.
yeah, and it just really struck me as someone who is choosing their self. It's not like maybe directly applicable to what happened with Charity and Xavier, but I do think it's a cool example of somebody that chose
Oh,
themselves. Can you
yes.
share that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I met this guy at a networking event. He showed interest in dating me at the time, but I found out at the time he was going through a divorce. It felt messy. I wasn't touching it, but I was good with us just being business associates. A year later, he asks a couple of my girlfriends at a networking event for my information. And my girlfriend texted me and goes, "Hey, can I give this guy your number?" And I told her no. Somehow he found my number and ended up reaching out to me within that same week. And he was like, "Look, since I've met you, I have not been able to forget about you. And I really want to take you on a date. I want you to notice me. I want you to spend time with me. I just bought tickets to a Beyonce concert. I've been in therapy the last week, and I'm also divorced. Will you go to this Beyonce concert with me in Chicago?" And I said, yes. I was like, yes, I'm going to go. This man has like literally gone above and beyond to spend time with me. I'm going to say yes to this. I'm going to be open minded, and I'm going to a Beyonce concert. That helped a lot, but I really wanted to spend time with him. I love grand gestures. Like, to me, that shows, hey, you're really invested. You're really interested. I like that, right? So I go to Chicago. I'm chauffeured there. I'm staying in the same hotel that Beyonce's staying at. I have never been in such a fancy hotel my whole entire life. I was in awe of everything, the fixtures, the light fixtures, the things. I was like, oh my gosh, there's peanut, or, you know, the nuts that are in my room. Like, everything's fascinating to me. And then I was like secretly fantasizing about running into Beyonce in the elevator. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I was kind of pretending like it might, right? So roses hand delivered to my hotel room, the best seats at the concert, a private dinner. Like, literally, I felt like I could smell Beyonce's hair based off of
Whoa.
where I was sitting. Okay, she smells like honey. Okay, just to stay on theme with the Beyonce, you know, Beyonce squad. So so anyway, it just got to this point in the date where, like, there were times he would bring up what he was doing for me, and in a way where it was just kind of like there was going to be an expectation at some point in time for me to return something to him in some way. And I was starting to get the sense like, ooh, I feel like I'm being love bombed. And it's like, you know, when someone makes all these grand gestures, it's like, yes, it's so easy to get like, take that and go like, oh my God, this person really likes me. They want to be with me forever. And, you know, all these things, this person's just really, you know, it's easy to take that and not slow your mind down to assess. So it came to the end of the night. He wanted to come to my room with me. And I said no, because he was like, I want to cuddle. And I was like, I'm not interested in cuddling. I'm not in a place where physical intimacy is on the menu for tonight, but I really enjoyed my time with you. And he did not like that answer. He made that very clear. And he brought up everything that he did for me as a means of trying to get what he wanted. And it was just this moment, kind of like how Charity did. I needed to take a moment. I took a deep breath, and I just like went into my body. And I was like, how is my body feeling right now? I just needed to connect with myself. I needed to connect with my nervous system because situations like that, where I know that I need to make a self-loving decision, like the one Destiny or Charity made
Mhm.
with Xavier, that can be very uncomfortable, especially being a woman that used to be in toxic relationships. Like, I didn't have boundaries. I didn't know how to set boundaries. I didn't know how to make self loving decisions. So I took a moment, connected with my body. My body said no. So, what came out of my mouth, because I'm a boundary boss these days and I know how to speak up for what I want and I know how to choose myself like Charity does, right? I said no. And I didn't give an F about how he felt about that. And that's what Charity showed us on The Bachelor with Xavier. It's like, you know what? I'm saying no to you. I'm saying yes to myself. It's uncomfortable, but guess what? This decision, like she said, I need to be selfish. Being selfish sometimes is the best gift you can give yourself, because at the end of the day, you're guaranteeing that you get what you want in your own love story. So, yeah, thank you for asking about that. That was such an amazing experience, and I also learned a lot about myself in at a Beyonce concert. What?
Yeah.
Come on, Beyonce. Thank you, boo.
Right. I was gonna say Beyonce would love that. I love that story because I think a lot of people would hear that and just been like, he did a lot for you. He pulled out all the
Yeah,
stops. Like, what are you gonna do?
yeah.
And it's like you are never under any obligation to say yes to something that doesn't feel right. And then, having your own back in that way. And I think that's essentially what we're talking about here with Charity, is that like she was able to check in with herself and just say, you know what, this doesn't feel right to me, and that is okay. And it doesn't matter that there's a million cameras on me and that I met his family and that he's saying that he wants to see more, whatever that meant in the episode, does not matter. It's okay to say no, because what it does ultimately is it frees her up mentally and emotionally for these guys who are here for her, who are ready. And maybe that makes sense then to move on to like her date with Joey and Dotton, like talking about those. The next one she goes on is with Joey. What did you think of that date?
Oh my gosh, can I tell you, I have a little soft spot for Joey. Like, every now and then, like when I'm watching The Bachelorette or The Bachelor, I get like this really soft spot for someone very specific on the show. And I think Joey has that, he opened up that soft spot in my heart. I think that date, the level of vulnerability and humanness on that date, in the way that they were able to relate to each other around people pleasing, that was mind blowing. Not only for me to hear a man talk about his own struggles on an emotional level, and feeling the pressure to kind of like people please. That was mind blowing to me, because it's like that's not a conversation that is had very often around, I think, men and their feelings sometimes, because I think men are pressured by society to suppress that in the way that masculinity is defined. And for Charity to sit and hold space for him in the way that she did and show relatability, I could see how they were building an even stronger connection on their flaws and imperfections. And that to me was such a powerful moment for everyone to see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think this is one of the very first moments where we actually get to see on camera them connecting over something other than, wow, we have really good energy together. We really like each other. And I think this is something that like Charity feels so deeply, is people get this idea of you and then you feel like you have to show up in that particular way, and that, then you stop knowing yourself really because you become this character that everybody wants you to be. And he's admitting this to her, and you can tell that he's like, I know that this could possibly be a deal breaker for her, but I am willing to say it because it's important that she knows this about me, that I am not this perfect human being and that I do have my flaws, and I hope that she'll still love me at the end of this if I admit this. And like, I mean, that is one of the most difficult thing you can do in any relationship, is even though the other person probably understands if they are also a human on this planet, just saying it out loud, it's hard not to just see it because you're in the weeds of your own life. And you just think like, okay, how
Oh
could
my
somebody love me if I'm like this?
Oh my gosh. You know what, Lynn? That is definitely a very vulnerable spot, even for me in my dating life. Allowing myself to be seen as a human, it's surprisingly such a struggle, being in that vulnerable place and showing someone that I want to connect to, or just like Joey did, just like Charity did, just showing someone like, hey, I want to connect to you. And there's this side of me that's so not perfect. And allowing that to be seen and even sharing that willingly, I think it's such a it's such a vulnerability, but at the same time, what I love is like I could see that both of them had the skill of being able to share that in such an
Mm.
open and vulnerable way. And they really showed this willingness to allow the other person to decide if they want to walk away. Because Joey and Charity both come off to me as pretty grounded individuals that are very self aware and that can take care of themselves emotionally, even if someone walks away, if they're not a right fit through sharing something so vulnerable.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and just as you were talking, I was thinking about how, like, she has two like outstanding men left, and Joey and in Dotton for very different reasons. And Joey strikes me as the type of man that maybe she needs right now in her life. Like, I need somebody that relates to me as I am right now, as I'm figuring out the world. We seem to have that in common, and it's easy to be around you, and it's easy to be myself around you. And when I think about Dotton, is I think she feels comfortable around him, but when I look at him, I was just like, he seems like the type of guy where you could have that lasting love, where maybe she doesn't feel quite as ease, quite there necessarily. Like she is, but there's something like that almost seems like when I see his date after Joey's, like it seems like there's almost some sort of spark missing for her that she has with Joey. And I was like, I wonder, it's
Mm.
like, combine the two maybe, but it seems like Dotton would be one of those that like you would grow into like a long-term love, and I could totally see if she picks Joey at the end, it would be like amazing for the right Charity of right now, but I don't know if he sees like almost like the woman that she can become and the man that they can become. Like it's still kind of up in the air, whereas with I get the sense with Dotton he feels very grounded and okay with thinking 10 years in the future, whereas Joey seems like a very right now type of person.
Lynn, you are brilliant. I think your insight is so on point because it's so funny that you were saying that. Because while you were saying that, I was like, wow, that's exactly what I was thinking. I think it's also like just like a little side note. I think it's so fascinating watching people's body language and being able to like just pick up what their energy is like
Mm.
together on a relationship standpoint, just watching them interact. And I have the exact same opinion. Like Joey is Mr. Right now. I just don't know if both of them have the tools and skills to be able to support each other through each other's funks.
Mm.
Whereas with Dotton, I'm seeing like this level of like grounded, like he's just very like consistent. And there's a word I'm looking for that slipped my tongue, but he has like this, hey, I'm rock solid. I've
Yes.
got you, and I can handle just about anything you bring my way. I'm going to be your rock, and we're going to take this to a completely different level. What I love to say too is that I try to avoid using fall in love, but sometimes it still slips out of
Mm.
my tongue. But what I really love to say is grow in love.
Mm.
Joey is someone she can fall in love with, right? It's a right now feeling. It can be fleeting because falling in love feels a little bit like out of your control, right? Whereas growing in love, I think it's like you know what love building skills are, and love is more of a practice than a feeling to you, and you can practice that every single day, no matter if you're feeling it or not. And I think with Dotton, she can grow in love. And I
Mm.
think that that is what's essentially important for sustainability and longevity in relationships. So I love your take on that. We totally agree on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that phrase grow in love because but even with someone like Dotton, like it's going to take maybe even more bravery to say yes to him because I don't think he's holding her on this like pillar of like this is the woman you are. I think he like it's really like holding space for the woman that she could become and wants to support her in that. And And that can also be scary. Like that could also be scary to say yes to that versus Joey, where it's like, ooh, this hot summer romance. It feels very tangible and real and good right now. And so I'll be curious to see what direction she takes in that. But that's the grow in love is definitely what I've seen from Dotton throughout. Like he just says things that are so lovely and genuine. Did you know that like he didn't know he was going to be on the show? Like his roommate's friend was going to be on the show, bailed 2 weeks ahead of time, and the producers asked him, "Do you know of anybody else that would be on the show?" And he's like, "Oh, this guy Dotton." Dotton had, I don't think, ever seen the show before, whatever. He didn't even know there was a proposal at the end of the show. He just knew that it was Charity and was like, "Yeah, she seems like an amazing woman." And I think that you see that reflected on the show because he seems so genuine. It's just like, oh, he would say this anyway, and there just happens to be a camera pointed at him. And this is just how he is. Like, you don't get the impression that he's been thinking about weeks for what kind of persona he wants to have on this show. He's just like, this is how I date. Do you like it? Like, this is how it goes.
Oh, that is so good. Yes, like he has like this level of self-confidence that to me is just so sexy. I love how he held space for Charity where he was like, "Oh my gosh, whatever decision she makes, I respect that." And I do get this sense of like how he's not putting up like putting on a show, which is something that's like really easy to like fall into that habit of putting on a show of like, oh, showing up as a person where you're just more like, I want this person to like me. That's putting on a show versus, am I going to like this person? How can I bring value into this person's life so that they can see this value reflected back in me as a human being? Dotton does that. And I love the way he shows up. I'm in awe at just like his presence. And it is very authentic and genuine. And you can tell he's really there for the right intentions. And the
Yeah.
reason why I'm kind of like giggling at the end of that is because throughout Bachelor and Bachelorette history, there's always a scandal about the right intentions. And I'm putting right intentions in quoting air quotes because that is always a scandal. And can I tell you, I do live for that scandal, but you will not see him in that scandal.
No. Oh, no. I mean, the only scandal he's probably stirred is when he said about his mama, like, oh, she's a little bit critical. She's probably like, Dotton, why did you say? She seemed like a lovely human.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah,
no, he's not
absolutely.
here for like followers or likes or the scandal. Like he legit was just like, whoa, you're telling me that there's this beautiful woman I already feel attracted to, but the way that I get to date her is I go on this TV show. Okay. Like I guess that's what we do. Um, I just thought that was really, really, really lovely. And there was one moment of their conversation where it seemed like Charity was kind of tense and impatient. And then at the end of the episode, you find out that there's like salamanders everywhere, and she was kind of freaking out about it. So I'm like, oh, okay. So she's probably like waiting for she keeps mentioning with Dotton, like, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, but she's also waiting for salamanders to drop on her head, and she wanted that moment to be over.
I thought that was funny. I really did think that was funny. And I think too, it's like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm.
I think that it's very easy to think about love in a way where it's a risk. And when you think about love in a way where you think it's risky as you're going into it, you're always going to be looking and waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I think that going back on theme with humanness, I think the human experience in life, period, is going to be positive and negative. And if you go into love expecting nothing but positive, or even dating, oh, I only want to experience all of the positive things, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to experience what I call expectation hangovers, right? You're always going to be hungover because your expectations are not going to be met, emotionally hungover, right? If you go into it going, you know what? There are going to be some things I like, there are going to be some things I don't like, even with the people I'm dating. Going into it that way, you're not going to be in this anxious state of looking for evidence that there's something wrong, because when you look for that evidence, that's all you're going to find. So with her, I think that maybe she's not, like you said, not really used to men like that. She's maybe more used to men like Joey, but I think that Dotton is going to help her evolve and grow. And that is so important when it comes to dating, is looking for someone you can grow with. Dotton is that guy.
Mm-hmm. 100%. When you said people going in and looking at love like it's a risk.
Mm.
Like, I think a lot of people think that way. How do you guide your clients on this? Like, how do you help them to see looking for love if not a risk?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think that the number one key to that is teaching like the emotional skills that my client would need to be able to take care of herself in moments where she might be scared, for instance, of being rejected, right? That I think that's like the number one fear. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to put my heart out there, I'm going to share with someone how I'm feeling. They might reject me, right? That gives off as love is a risk, dating is a risk, right? But if you're able to take care of yourself emotionally and and look at this as information that's redirecting you, having that mindset shift of, oh wait, I'm always redirected to meeting my person, and on top of that I have the emotional skills to take care of myself in events like this. When you can ease and soothe your own nervous system and your own emotional well-being is in your hands and you're in charge of that, that's literally all you need to see love and dating as less of a risk and more of something that you can you can just like put yourself in it, and show the f up in a way where you're
Hmm.
taking charge and it's not a risk. So yeah, that's like the simplest way that I can put that.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I don't think people, some people think they could think about it any other way of like, because it's just so
Yeah,
commonplace. It's a risk. It's
yeah.
a gamble, all that kind of language when you can just see, like, hey, it's not. This is just something that I want. And I can support myself emotionally through the process and stay open. And I don't have to look at it. I don't have to be like on
Yes.
red alert, hyper vigilant for red flags. Um,
a
I
100%.
suspect that's how charity dates in the real world, where it's just like open and whatever. And just for the purposes of this show, because it's so short and she has to be so evaluative, I think that's when we get stressed, we fall back on, whatever our like kind of go-tos are. And for hers, it's like, well, if I'm gonna evaluate, it's gotta be no infidelity. It's gotta be, you know, somebody who is open-minded and emotionally intelligent and all these things. But we just keep seeing her go back to all those things. Um, but I think she keeps pulling herself out of love is a risk and versus this is something that I want. And I really think I really do believe that like her person could still be here. Whereas, there's many seasons where I don't necessarily believe that. Mostly I'm just like, all right, well, we're probably gonna break up in 6 months after our final taping and the big reveal to the world. Like, I really think that she could find something through this, like find a relationship through this that she could live in for a while. Personally, I hope it's with Don. I don't know, what do you have thoughts on this? I
Oh,
suspect I do, but
listen, Lynn Doughton all day. And you know what's so interesting is like where I can kind of relate to charity is like even in my love life now, it's like my go-to, my comfort zone used to be men that were emotionally unavailable, meaning they just didn't have the emotional skills to grow in love with me, right? And they didn't have love building skills. And so for me, that used to be my comfort zone. And once again, I thought that I was in charge of the fix a man
Mm.
workshops, like Charity said. I love that, what she said. But I think that like that was just my comfort zone. And now seeing Joey as her comfort zone, but not in that like way where he's emotionally unavailable. It's just
Mhm.
Mr. Right Now. She's used to going for Mr. Right Now. Now shifting out of my comfort zone, out in this world of dating, it's like my taste in men has changed drastically as I've done my own work. And now it's like, yes, I want emotionally available men. Yes, I want men that are sure about me. Yes, I want men that prioritize me. And that's something that Charity noticed about Doughton. It's like, oh, he prioritizes me. She noticed that. And that is something that I notice. And sometimes being around these men and seeing how evolved they are in their own love building skills. And sometimes I get intimidated when I notice someone, oh, they're more skilled than I am. Ooh, that's kind of scary to me. That's out of my comfort zone. I don't know what to do with this. And I notice how I fall back into my love
Mm.
blocking energy where I'm going for what's comfortable, or I'm making myself small, or I'm people pleasing, or I'm not a lot, I'm not holding fast to my boundaries. That is a normal part of the process. You're not like no one's ever going to show up perfectly in the dating arena, right? There's going to be times where you're going to shift back and take a few steps back and make mistakes or f up, right? But there are
Mhm.
also like what the most beautiful thing about doing your work and it's like shifting into what I call date me energy is like when you're in date me energy, you can see when you're in that place where you're going back to your comfort zone and you can pull yourself out of that, like the way you mentioned Charity has done so many different times. So yes, I'm team Dotton all day. He is out of her comfort zone, but I think that he is what she needs. And I'm excited to see what decision she makes for herself.
Same. I am so excited. And even if it's not Dotton, now she knows if it doesn't work out in this season, now she knows that there are men out there that she like that can be that person for her. Right? Because it's like obviously she's been doing compare and contrast this whole season. And I wonder if that's given her the confidence to say no to men like Xavier, because she's like, no, but there's men like Dotton out there. And when I look at the two
100%.
together, like Dotton is solid. He is grounded. Go for that. So I don't know. I know we're like so like maybe like what 2 weeks from the finale from actually finding out. And so I'm just so eager to know. I know the teasers for next week are her talking to her mom, not knowing who to pick. And we'll see what happens with that. I really hope it's Dotton though. And I really hope that like it's just becomes that fairy tale. Like like I don't know. Well, it's not even a fairy tale. Like she can make this real life. So anyway, was there anything else on your mind from this? This has been such an amazing conversation.
Oh my gosh, it's such an amazing conversation. I would just say in closing, it's like I love how we were on theme with like humanness and choosing yourself. And I think the thing I want to say, like overall, is that while the process on TV is like meticulously, produced and planned out and, very fast, I think that regardless of what you see on TV, the real life dating world does require you to choose yourself. It does require you to show up as human, and it does require you to take your time in growing in love versus
Mhm.
all the falling in love you see on The Bachelorette. I love that everyone's falling in love, but sometimes I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of falling in love. How do you keep up with all this?
Yeah.
But it's out in the real world. It's just like, I just want everyone to understand that you're going to have a human experience no matter what. And it's like, allow yourself to be human and you're just going to shine as bright as a star to the right person that wants to see you and get to know you, and they're going to really like the crap out of you. So I just want to encourage you to allow your humanness to just be, because at the end of the day you really are a human being, and so am I and everyone watching the show. So thanks for bringing that up, Lynn.
Yes. I love all of this. I've learned a lot from you today too, which is, always a good thing to be able to bring back into the world after this. If somebody was looking for you online, where would they go to find you? All the links.
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's at Coach Me Steph. Steph with an F, not a PH. I can't tell you how many times I was like on the phone with customer service and they can't find me because of the F/PH sitch. So that's
Mhm.
why I mentioned it. And yeah, the other thing is I have a website. It's stephaniemarianne.com if you want to learn more about what I do and how I can help whomever in the dating world. And Lynn, is it okay to mention my podcast?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. I have a podcast. It's called Dating Boot Camp. It is on Spotify. It is on Amazon and it is on Apple. And so that's where you can find me. If you just want to learn more about some of the work that I do, my take on dating is a little bit different than the, just dating advice that's out there. So yeah, check it out if you're interested. Thank you, Lynn.
Yes, and I'll have all the show notes or the links in the show notes so you can find easily there. So then you don't have to remember if it's a PH or an F. You'll just have the link right
Yes.
there and you can go find Stephanie. So thank you
Oh
again
my
so
gosh,
much
you're
for coming
amazing.
on the show. This has been a delight to get to know you and to talk all things Bachelor with you.
So happy. Thank you so much.
Yay. Okay.